Thank you for joining us for our next episode of the Japan Startup Megaphone. Today we have a guest. His name is Christian Schmitz. He is the founder of the Purpose-Driven Innovation Ecosystem, also called PDIE, and he is going to talk to us on the topic of environment-focused startups in Japan. He's involved with something called the Climate Launchpad, which is a European Union-backed initiative, but it also has a Japan branch through Mr. Schmitz's activities. And he's going to talk about where do Japanese startups place in terms of their peers in Europe and in other parts of the developed world. And he's also going to talk about sort of the unique characteristics that Japanese environment-focused startups tend to have. So it's quite a good and longish discussion, so please stick around, and we'll jump in right at the beginning of the interview. Thank you for joining us. Could you let us know who are you, what's your background, and what brings you to the Japanese world?
Hello, everybody. My name is Christian Schmitz. I'm the founder of the PDIE group, the Purpose-Driven Innovation Ecosystem. And talking about where I'm coming from is a long story, but to keep it short, I started in corporate environments, multinational corporations. Quite the opposite from what I'm doing now, starting in agrochemicals, Bayer, BASF, then Henkel. Then I had an adventure into the world of furniture, interior design. I created a lifestyle community there, which led me to my first startup experience, which was an app called Kuchi. And maybe you know about Kudo's first benefit, the international community membership benefits program. We were targeting at the international community in Tokyo, and we provided membership benefits for restaurants, travel, leisure, and these kind of things. And I quickly came to the conclusion I need a mobile app. It was around 2011. And I came across my co-founding partner for the first real startup where we did fundraising and all these kind of things. And we created an app called Kuchi. And that was about word of mouth recommendation. And we raised 2 investment rounds. We developed a very nice product, but we didn't do so much on the user acquisition. We had about 3,000 users, but not all of them were active users. So it was difficult to raise another round. And then it was a very good learning. And we were a little bit ahead of the time with this kind of approach. But it brought me into the world of startups. And in 2017, I was involved as a co-founding member of the World Innovations Forum, a Swiss foundation. And I was the ambassador for Japan. We were looking at startups. And one of the assumptions is that 90% of all startups fail. And isn't there something, what we can do in order to create an ecosystem, a global ecosystem, to create this collaborative spirit, mindset, and culture, which is prevailing in Silicon Valley, for example. If you start something, you have an idea, you go out, you talk to somebody, and you're not afraid that somebody steals your idea. And I did this for 2 years, and then I found that too broad, and I thought that we have a lot of problems on our planet, and a lot of these problems are related to the environment and our human species exploiting our natural environments. And I thought that we need to move from the linear economy to a more circular economy. And in order to do that, we need innovation. And we need startups. We need the same kind of spirit which we have in the startup ecosystem applied to sustainable solutions. And that brought me to the idea to come up with the purpose-driven innovation ecosystem. And purpose-driven, it always starts from, in the beginning, asking yourself why. So the reason why you are doing something and how you want to contribute to the environment, to the society by solving problems. And we started this 2 years ago, and now we have basically three pillars of our activities. One is the PDIE Institute. We educate and inspire, create awareness, gather experts around different topics. And then we have the PDIE Consulting. So we shift this awareness into action. We do business matching. We put investors to solutions. And we have the PDIE ecosystem building, where we hold larger and smaller scale events. We have the Future Lunch series, for example. And this year we are intending to have a carbon removal conference, which would be a little bit more large scale. And we have, within these three pillars, now we have the initiative targeting the early stage startups, which startups from the idea stage can actually apply for. This is a climate launchpad. We have the Earthshot Prize, and we have a corporate initiative.
First of all, I kind of want to back up to one point. How long have you been in Japan, and how long has it been Japan-based work that you've been doing?
I have been in Japan since almost 20 years now. Arrived first time as a student in 1997, actually.
1997. That's actually the year I came here as well. So now the Launchpad initiative you were about to tell us. So what exactly is it, and who's involved with it?
So the Climate Launchpad is a part of the EU-backed initiative, and it's EIT Climate Kick. EIT stands for European Institute of Innovation and Technology, and KIC, actually knowledge, information, something, I don't know. It's the institute which is doing the acceleration for environmentally related startups. It's worldwide, it's one of the most well-funded initiatives in green business ideas. And the Climate Launchpad itself is, in this context, the idea and early stage tool. And at the moment, this is the largest green business idea competition in the world, with 56 countries participating.
Is there a special Japan role in this, or is this Japan based in some way, or is Japan just part of this much larger program?
Japan is part of the whole program, but the PDIE group, and that's why I explained it in the beginning, we are the national lead for Japan. So we are managing everything here in Japan in terms of this ideas competition.
And generally speaking, when since you do have this sort of ability to compare with what's going on in other countries, is the startup community in Japan, the environment-focused startup community in Japan, stronger or weaker, or does it have areas where it's particularly doing notable work?
Well, without offending anybody here in Japan, it's just emerging right now. So I think it's a great timing to start with it. But first of all, the awareness is not where it is, for example, in Europe. And there's a lot of work to do. But we also participated in the Japan Ministry of Environment Startup Award. And that was one of the first signs that there's really movement now. And Koizumi-san, the environmental minister, he is quite driven by this, and he's more active than his predecessors, I think.
Maybe I have an imagination deficit here, but what would an environmental focused startup mean, what kind? I mean, obviously, it could be anything that any ideas that the founders come up with. But can you give us two or three examples of sort of emerging startups in this field? What are they actually engaged in? What are they doing?
We have the topics this year are adaptation and resilience. So it's all related to climate change, clean energy, and in the field of energy, it could be developing some new energy source, for example. It could be developing a new business model around energy. Applying blockchain would be something interesting. We have food systems as another topic, and you could think about the topic of food waste. There are a huge amount of restaurants all around Tokyo, and we have a young startup now which is actually using the food waste and turning it into fertilizer. And out of the fertilizer, they have contracts with farmers, and then they sell the products back into Tokyo. Circular economy is something which is a topic. So if reduce, reuse, recycle. So you can develop either new materials, or you can think about new business models like sharing economy models. There is a startup called Air Closet. I don't know if you have heard about it. It's about sharing your clothes, actually. So then the whole carbon topic, for example. So if it could be about carbon offsetting, it could be just simply about how to actually count the emissions which a company is emitting. At the moment, there is no standard for this, so it's a huge topic, and there are already solutions, but not in Japan actually. So I think I have given quite some hints now for people, and we could actually distinguish between ideas which are really which are very business oriented and generate profit, and then we can distinguish to the more non-profit and NGO type of ideas, which is for protecting and restoring nature. There are people who are mimicking coral reefs with new materials in order to recreate biodiversity in the ocean, for example. We have one startup, which is also an NPO, which creates an app for donating for regenerating and protecting forests around the world. So the dilemma of the user is, if you want to donate something for forests, you don't know where, but they do the selection for you. These are all examples of what you could do as a startup to create an impact.
Forgive me for breaking in the middle of the interview, but we just wanted to mention that the Japan Startup Megaphone is a production of Akihabara News, and in order to see more content like this in the future, we really need your support. And so for those of you who do want to support us, please do so at our Patreon page. You can find that under the Shingetsu News Agency. That's Shingetsu News Agency, which is our mother company. If you go to that Patreon page and donate a little bit of money, we can have content like this, do a lot more interviews, and sustain ourselves for many years into the future. Okay, let's get back into it. Have you noticed anything about Japanese startups in particular, those which created by Japanese founders, that show any different characteristics or any different emphases, compared to international cousins? As you say, it's still kind of a fledgling sector in Japan. But are there talented young people coming into it in sufficient numbers? And when there are, do they behave just like any founders anywhere around the world, or is there anything different about the way that startups are approached here in Japan?
Yeah, that's also a good question. We can see definitely we can see talented young people. First of all, the awareness is a little bit different from other parts of the world. And in surveys, for example, what often comes out is that sustainability is something which takes effort, which is not interesting and not exciting. So if Japanese startup entrepreneurs want to do something in sustainability, they want to make it fun, they want to make it colorful, and they want to be creative about it, which is also in a way a um, good way to do it, I think. And then we can see that there is this J Startup initiative, the Japanese government or also the Tokyo metropolitan government. And sometimes some of these startups get picked out at an early stage, and they get all kind of support. So we have a large corporate network here, and all these corporations are interested in acquiring the ideas or having a relationship to these young startup entrepreneurs. And we have seen one interesting example was a company called Water, WOTA. So they are very much pushed at the moment, and they also won an award at this green startup pitch of the Ministry of Environment. They assume that water is one of the most challenging problems of our times right now, and they create these water cycles for places where you don't have water, or you can recycle the water and reuse it again. And they have these small, so it's good for disaster prevention, it's good for desertification, like very dry areas. So it could be good for emerging markets. And on the other hand, what you can also see is that there are some clever startup entrepreneurs who just see an idea which is already existing in another country, and they just copy it and bring it to Japan. I don't mention the example because I might actually step on somebody's toes, but
Yeah, understood. That's probably a time-tested way of innovation in many countries. People say that in the Japanese startup world, one of the things that's not really lacking is money. There's that corporations and others and governments are willing to invest some money in startups. But are there areas in which you're finding that startups here do need more support? What areas, well, what would you say is the most critical need for the startup community in Japan to get stronger and to become more on the level of some of its international peers?
yeah, even if it seems that there's money in abundance, if you really compare the total amount which is invested from VCs, angel investors, and so on, it's still very, very small compared to US and China. I had recently looked at the figures, and there's also the Japan Venture Capital Association, which regularly introduces these statistics about it. One critical need is to get to the stage where you can attract the funding, and the fewest people who have these ideas come to the stage that they really actually get funding. And you can see certain kind of patterns. There are very often people who have not had their education in Japan, or they have partly their education in Japan. They went to MIT, Harvard, or whatever, and then come back to Japan, and they have a totally different standing. And it's easier from this ecosystem to support them than somebody who just is oriented in a domestic way. The domestic Japanese market already offers a huge potential. If you do something right, you wouldn't need to actually scale globally your startup. So some of these Japanese startup entrepreneurs, they don't even think about going outside of Japan.
And in your view, that's okay because they have a big enough market here to deal with.
But in Japanese there is the word mottai nai, so it's mottai nai. No? So if they just do it in Japan, and they could actually capture much larger markets, and they have an interesting solution which could also work elsewhere. Uh, and I think there is a lot of potential here in Japan, which we could really find and bring outside of Japan.
Okay, great. And so that kind of leads very smoothly to the next thing is what is this, what are your goals now? I understand that you're making a call out to various organizations at the moment as part of your current initiative. Can you explain a little bit more about what you're doing now concretely?
You mean with the climate launchpad or
Yes,
in general?
with the
With
climate
climate
launch pad.
launchpad, yeah. So we are looking for ideas, and these ideas are in the areas which I already mentioned: is adaptation and resilience, it's sustainable mobility, it's urban solutions, clean energy. You gonna apply, and the deadline would be 14th of May, and it doesn't need to be very perfect. And who can apply? Everybody can apply who has the idea and is committed to push through and scale this as a business. Because we offer 3 modules: a mini course, which is self-paced, so they can go through it by themselves, and it's doable in a week of time. Then we have the boot camp, which is like a kind of a business school. So we really offer a business school, and the good point is it's all for free, and they get a new angle on their business. They will be mentored after the boot camp, and then we have the grand final in August 20, and from this grand final here in Japan, we select 3 finalists, which would be advanced to the regional final, and from the regional final there would be the global final. And of course, I hope that because Japan is participating the first time, I hope that we get Japanese entrepreneurs. And it doesn't need to be a Japanese person. It needs to be somebody who has a company incorporated in Japan, or who has developed the idea here in Japan and is actually here.
It seems like mostly what you're offering for most of those people is education and that sort of thing, how to help them to learn more about becoming a successful startup. And you also talk about the finals. What happens if somebody does become a finalist? Is there some sort of cash prize or investment at the end of the rainbow there? What's the incentive for them to get involved?
Yeah, for the global finals, there are cash prizes, but to avoid that some countries have higher cash prizes than the global final, for the national finals, we have in-kind prizes. So it could be something. We have one first partnership with Shibuya Qs. I don't know if you know that, QWS. It's a new incubation space owned by JR, Tokyo, and Metro, the 3 railway companies, and it's focusing on social impact and environment, and also creativity. They have some artists and residents there, and somebody who wins could get free membership in this space, for example. And we have more to be announced soon from other sponsors.
I see. So you're still gathering together the full package of what people could get.
Exactly, but it's really like an Olympics of startups, and it's also the attractiveness of the whole ecosystem. And there are lots of success stories. Yesterday in the launch event, we had 2 panelists who have been finalists in the global final. One won in a category called The Next Big Thing, and the other one was a finalist in 2019 And it was very interesting to hear from their experiences and how it helped them to get from this competition to the next stage, raising funds, developing the commercialized product, having their first sales, and all of this. So this is all a result of going through this short boot camp.
That's more or less exhausted my questions, but is there anything that you would like to kind of say about the startup community in Japan, or to the startup community in Japan, that we haven't covered yet?
Well, I always say that if you have an idea and you really are committed, don't hesitate to pursue this idea and test it get feedback from as many people as possible, but utilize this feedback in a positive way and start developing the idea and find people who would develop this together with you. And then when you are in the stage that it becomes something which is realistic to do, then start building a company. There are tools out there which can be very helpful.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank you for joining Japan Startup Megaphone today. I think that we know that in the environmental field, this is an area where startups in Japan probably will make a larger contribution going forward, and we're glad to talk to somebody who's trying to help make that happen. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
That concludes our fourth podcast in the Japan Startup Megaphone series. The podcast will be available on some podcast networks for about 3 months, but for our permanent collection, please go to the at Shingetsu News YouTube channel. You can find all of our podcasts there on its own playlists. And of course, you can visit the Akihabara News webpage or website, which you can find at akihabaranews.com. Well, thank you again for joining us. We do have our next interview already lined up, and it's a really exciting one. So please join us. We'll be back soon.